What the f? Alright, hammerheads, welcome back. We are back at the house because the fishing really slowed down and I wasn't catching anything, so I decided to come back and do my outro because I know that I didn't talk enough about what I was doing and why I was doing it, based on the fact that I got a little distracted with the people that came, and I'm still very new to this, so it's a little distracting and a little weird when other people are around and you're talking to yourself, basically, or to the camera. So I want to come back to the house where it's quiet, there's no one else around here except the cats. So what I want to go over is the time of day, the location, positioning of the fish, the baits I use, depth of the fish, and the techniques I was using to fish those baits and what got results and why. So first off, time of day. I got up at the butt crack of dawn, 4:30 a.m. That way I was out on the lake as the sun was coming up. Another reason why I went out so early is because it is summertime and trout love to feed, I guess any kind of species mainly, love to feed in low light because they are predatory fish, they are ambush predators, so they love low light, and that's the best time to go, whether it be in the morning or just before dark. So I chose in the morning instead of just before dark because I am going for trout and it is cooler and the water is a little bit cooler because trout are very sensitive to water temps. Bass, a little bit different, smallmouth, especially, they love to feed right before dark. Next thing was location. Went to the dam. So the lake's really low right now, so we have a new dam, and then when they built the lake, originally they had a different dam which wasn't big enough and they had to build a new one. But because of that, we get lucky because they did leave up the dam, and when it gets shallow enough, you can literally walk out on it, and it's just a great location because it's a good spot to ambush prey for bass and trout, and also deep water. So these fish have access to shallow water, or they can drop down to lower water. Next thing I want to go over was the trout positioning. A lot of amateurs don't realize that you do not have to cast a country mile out into the middle of the abyss to catch fish. You have to think, what is the best position for a fish to ambush its food? So if you were that fish, you kind of have to think like a fish, I guess, for a lack of a better term. So you want to think, okay, do I have a better chance of attacking my prey hiding behind something, or if I'm in the middle of a parking lot jumping around, or a field being like, I want to freaking eat you? No, you want to hide. These trout are literally hugging the wall. Like if you look down, wall, trout is literally right up against it, and that's how they would ambush their prey. That's how they would, eat my baits. That's how they eat my lures, is they would come flying out, Mach 8 from against this wall and attack your bait. So my tip to you amateurs is think like the fish. Don't cast a million miles in the middle of nowhere thinking you're gonna catch a fish out there. You might, chances are you're not. Next thing I wanna talk about are the baits I used. So I only used a few things because I was going for trout. The first thing I used was a marabou jig just because it's a little bit bigger profile, it was white. The sun hadn't quite come up yet, so I wanted something they could see, and I've had great results on white marabou jigs. So they're not only for crappie, basically they catch any kind of fish, really. Second bait I used was a Berkeley trout worm, and these are great because obviously they last longer than a regular worm. You can get them in different colors, so you can use them in different situations. So I chose the yellow one based on the fact that the water was a little stained, and for some reason trout love yellow. You can catch trout anywhere they live on something yellow. For some reason they love it. The second thing I used was someone had left worms out there, so they left 4 containers of live worms. So you know what? I use live worms. Nothing better than live bait. Nothing moves like live bait. Actually, my buddy that was there caught a bigger fish than I did on live worms. So live bait. I don't normally use live bait, but because they were there, I just thought, what the heck. The next thing I want to talk about, which is very important, which actually before the baits you use or anything, you want to pay attention to the depth. Fish, no matter what species, set themselves up in the most prime place for survival. For instance, the highest dissolved oxygen levels, the prime temperature, depending on the time of day or the clarity of the water will really go into play. Also, they're gonna set themselves up to where they can eat, where the food is. One thing you wanna know before you got anywhere, what are the temperatures of the body of water you're fishing. Another important aspect, if you can find it, is the limnological report. So basically, the limnological report is a report that they put out. For instance, this lake, they put out every week, so I pay attention to that. They test the temperature from surface to to the bottom. They test the dissolved oxygen levels, and they also do it all around the lake. I really pay attention to those. I really suggest look up the limnological reports if you can, if they have it. The last few things I want to talk about are the techniques I used and the depth that I fished at. Start off with the marabou jig. I got one bite. No, I take that back. I had two, because the second one is what really made me change my thought process about what I wanted to use. So the first strike I had was a pretty solid strike. Second one was a short strike. So when they short strike it, it tells me that they are not fully committed. So what I do is when I get a short strike, I either change the color or I downsize the bait. In this instance, I changed the bait. So I went with the yellow trout worm first. I rigged it in a typical bass fashion, but I rigged it in a fashion what's normally called, what I know it as, a flick shake. I'll demonstrate. So I have my trout worm, and we have the fat part at the top, skinny part at the bottom. I used a very, very small jig head because I wanted it to fall as slowly and naturally as possible, but I also needed a little bit of weight because I was using a medium action rod, which I don't normally recommend if you're trout fishing. I recommend medium light or ultralight. And I was using 6-pound test line. Also, 6-pound is fine for trout. I use 6-pound because the water was a little dingy, so it's fine. But I needed something that I could at least try to cast, or at least that would sink a little bit. So basically a flick shake is you take your bait. This is how I do it. So I take my bait, I literally fold it in half. So I fold it in half. I take my jig, and you basically just wacky rig it. You find the center. These guys you can pinch, or you can do it with a Senko too. And you just run the hook right through the middle, and basically you want to make sure it sits even, and that's basically it. That's it right there. So a flick shake, what happens is this jig head will drag it down, but you want it to drag it down in the center. So you want to pay attention that when it's falling, it's basically even. You don't want one side going down, one side going the other. So when it falls, your little worm will do a little shimmy as natural as possible, and those fish love it. So then when you do jig it too, you don't want to just pull it straight up. You can and then let it fall, but I like to do like a little twitch. That way it kind of looks like it's more alive, and then I just let it fall. That's it. Even the live worm. But I downsized my jig head because the live worm is heavier, so you don't need as much weight. So I actually took what's called a trout magnet jig head. Trout magnets are super cheap and they're awesome. They work too. I didn't use trout magnets today. I used the jig head. So all I did is I basically just did the same thing. I have a natural color. This one works too. But I basically just did the same thing. I folded the live worm in half as much as I could because they're a little squirmy, and I basically just did the same thing. I wacky rigged it, folded the worm over. They get a little squirmy, but still, and that's it. And that worked phenomenally for myself and the people that were around me. So I just went over the baits, and the last thing I want to touch upon, which is very, very important, the depth of where I was fishing. So I looked up the limnological reports, and the thermocline, it's another great thing you want to look up, is thermocline. Your thermocline is normally going to be your best spot. I focus on a depth from 7 feet all the way down to about 18 feet. So the shallower 7 feet end was when it was lower light. The deeper ends was when the sun was up, because it will push the fish down a little bit. I just focused on those depths. You just have to try to figure it out. You just you experiment. If you also notice in the video, you'll notice my technique. Most of the time I was vertically jigging, but I was just really just checking the depths along the wall where the fish were. They were hugging the wall. So all I did was I was just checking the depths. One really good technique is, if, for me, luckily you can walk out on the dam, but if you have a boat or kayak or whatever, is you cast up towards the shore. You keep your rod up probably about, probably like a 2 o'clock position, and you just let that bait pendulum down as the water gets deeper along the wall. This is really good technique in the winter for bass too. So if you're ledge fishing, this is great too. At least a lot of professionals that I've heard talk about this topic talked about, just using like a marabou jig or a jig and just letting it pendulum down. It's a good way to find suspended fish, find out what depth they're sitting, and just work that depth. That was one of the things that I did in the beginning to try to figure out where those fish were and how deep. Great technique. I suggest you guys try it if you can. The whole pendulum shenanigans. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I had fun making it. I had fun catching those fish. I had fun just kind of telling you guys about what I use and some techniques that I've learned over I won't tell you exactly how many years it is, but it's a lot of fishing for trout and things that I've learned, whether it be just reading, researching, etc., etc. Let me know if you guys have any other questions, whether it be about techniques, baits, whatever it is for trout. Thanks for watching. Thanks for checking it out. I love doing this kind of stuff for you guys. Please like and subscribe. Throw some shade if you don't. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next video.